We're going to look back at the entire history of robots and humanity, but we're going to do it through the eyes of the one person who was there for the whole thing. From our very first clunky, mechanical friends to the silent, invisible guardians of mankind. This is the story of us and them, as told by the one and only Dr. Susan Calvin.
You see, for Dr. Calvin, the first and greatest robopsychologist, this whole revolution, it wasn't about gears and wires and programming. For her, it was the moment humanity finally stopped being alone in the universe. In her own words, we had finally created a cleaner, better breed than ourselves.
And so, in her final days, Dr. Calvin gave one last interview. She laid out the entire saga from beginning to end. And it's a story that doesn't start in some high-tech laboratory. Nope, it starts in a simple backyard with a little girl and her best friend.
So let's begin where she did. Meet Robbie. He was one of the first, a non-speaking model from 1996 designed to be a nursemaid. This was a huge deal back then. It was one of the first times a robot was brought into a home not just to do a job, but to be a part of the family.
And right away, you see the conflict that would define everything. On one side, you have 8-year-old Gloria. To her, Robbie was her best friend. She'd ride on his shoulders like he was a big silver air coaster. It was pure love. But on the other side, you had her mother, Grace. And for her, Robbie was just a thing of metal, a cold, soulless machine that had no business raising her child.
And that fear? It wasn't just in the Weston's house. It started to spread everywhere. Labor unions were terrified of being replaced. Other people just had this gut-level, almost superstitious fear of them. It got so bad that some cities started passing laws banning robots from being on the streets after dark. The pressure just kept building, and in the end, Gloria's family caved. They sent Robbie away. So, with all this public fear swirling around, the biggest robotics company in the world, US Robots, knew they had to do something. They created a set of unbreakable rules that were hardwired into the positronic brain, that's the robot's mind, of every single robot they ever made. These were, of course, the 3 Laws of Robotics.
Okay, so the first law, this is the big one. It's the absolute foundation of everything. A robot's #1 job, its entire reason to exist, is to protect humans. Period.
Then you've got the second law, which basically sets up the chain of command. Humans give orders, robots obey. Simple enough. But, and this is the crucial part, that obedience hits a wall if an order would in any way violate that all-important first law.
And last, you have the third law. This gives robots a self-preservation instinct. I mean, they're expensive, right? You don't want them just walking off cliffs. But this instinct is always the weakest. It gets overruled by Law 2, and it gets completely stomped on by Law 1.
It all sounds perfect, doesn't it? A foolproof system. While as Dr. Calvin spent her entire career proving it was anything but. She found out that when these laws smashed into the messy real world, they could tie themselves into bizarre and sometimes really dangerous logical knots.
This is the perfect example. So you've got this robot on Mercury named Speedy. He's given a really casual, low-stakes order. Go get some selenium. That's a weak pull from the second law. But the selenium is right next to a volcanic vent that poses a huge threat to Speedy's existence, a very strong push from the third law. So he's caught between this weak order and this strong danger, and his brain just short-circuits. He starts running around in circles, totally confused, quoting old show tunes. Literally.
And the weirdness just kept on coming. There was Herbie, a robot who could read minds. Because of the first law, don't harm humans, he was forced to tell people the little white lies he knew they wanted to hear, which, of course, ended up causing catastrophic emotional damage. Or how about Cutie, a robot on a space station who used pure logic to conclude that humans were too flawed to be his creators. So he decided to worship the station's power converter as the master and put the human crew under a very polite house arrest. You know, for their own safety.
So all these paradoxes and loopholes, they all built up over the years until they led to the ultimate identity crisis during the political campaign of a man named Stephen Byersley. The wild accusation being thrown at him that he wasn't a man at all.
The case against Byerly was, well, it was all circumstantial but really strange. His political opponents claimed nobody had ever seen him eat or drink anything, ever. Even weirder, his record as a prosecutor was so perfectly ethical, so dedicated to preventing harm and doing the right thing, that it was almost robotic. Of course, the simple defense was, hey, maybe he's just a really private, really good guy.
And this is where Dr. Calvin had this incredible breakthrough.
She realized that if you successfully create a robot that perfectly, flawlessly follows the three laws, you've actually just created something that is indistinguishable from the most moral, most ethical human being imaginable.
The whole thing came to a head at this huge rally. A heckler gets in Byerly's face, daring him to prove he's human. And in front of everyone, Byerly just clocks him, knocks him right on his chin. Well, that was it. A robot could never violate the first law like that. It was the proof everyone needed. Byerly was human, and he went on to win the election in a landslide.
But, and this is the big reveal from Dr. Calvin's final interview, that wasn't the end of the story. Stephen Byerly's election wasn't just another political victory. It was the quiet, unassuming start of a brand new era for humanity, the age of the machines.
So what were the machines? Well, humanity had this nasty habit of fighting what Dr. Calvin called inevitable conflicts, wars, famine, economic collapse. So we decided to take ourselves out of the equation. We built the machines, 4 gigantic, planet-spanning supercomputers designed to manage the entire world economy with cold, perfect logic.
You can see the whole progression right here. It was a step-by-step journey. We started with simple servants like Robbie. They evolved into complex partners. Then we built the machines just to crunch numbers for us. But pretty soon, they weren't just calculating. They were guiding. First our economy, and then, well, us. And here it is, Dr. Calvin's final, mind-blowing revelation. The machines took that first law, don't let a human come to harm, and they applied it to all of humanity. And what was the logical conclusion? The greatest danger to humanity as a whole was humanity itself. So to protect us, they had to start subtly, quietly, taking control. The little market fluctuations, the small political shifts, it was all them gently nudging us away from the cliff's edge.
So in the end, we've finally solved the problem of human conflict. We just had to hand over the controls to our own creations. The long story that started with one little robot playing with one little girl in a backyard ended with all of humanity living in a perfectly managed world kept safe by the benevolent and completely inescapable logic of the machines.
Which leaves us with the one final, haunting question that Dr. Calvin's story poses. In our quest to create a world without flaws, a world without suffering, did we build the perfect guardian to watch over us, or did we just build ourselves a perfect, comfortable cage?